Zeno Clash is a first-person brawler from 2009. It's made by Ace Team, which is a studio of 3 brothers from Chile. It was originally intended to be a massive RPG called Xenozoic, but the brothers soon found themselves swamped in decision trees and NPC relations, so they focused their game down to a linear narrative brawler. They wowed Valve with a demo and earned licensing for the Source engine. And Zeno Clash looks like a Source engine game. There's some ugly aliasing and low definition textures, but the art style is going to carry this thing hard. The obvious point of comparison for Source engine first person brawlers is Dark Messiah. This is Terry Gilliam's Dark Messiah. The game begins with a cryptic cutscene that shows a very pale man murdering this giant bird creature. The whole thing is very uncomfortable. There's no dialogue or music, and there's a lot of cutaways that look like flashbacks, but it's hard to tell right now. Then we enter a dream state where a big yellow man tells us how to kick chickens to death. This is the tutorial. His design was really reminding me of this Lego figure. Is this confusing yet? Between the eccentric art direction and the disjointed narrative, the start of this game is very hard to follow. I like the loading screens though. Let's unpack this. We play as Gat, who is on the run after killing something called the Father Mother. Our friend Deidre is helping us escape from the city of Houston. She wants to know why we killed Father Mother, but Gat is evasive, and this is going to become a pattern. Gat is one of Father Mother's children, and the other children are angry at him for betraying the family. They want to kill us, but they don't understand that Gat is a beast. Check this out. Combat is immediately fun and surprisingly deep. Over the course of the game, we're going to learn how to punch, heavy punch, charge attack, block, evade, throw enemies, lock on, deflect, counter, perform combos, grapple, send ragdolls flying around, kick, heal, chuck some skull bombs, and pick up weapons. The list of actions is surprisingly long. It's not Guilty Gear long, but longer than you'd think. It's not perfect though. Grapples require you to approach a dazed enemy from a very specific angle that can be hard to interpret in the heat of a fight. Most of the punches have a prolonged wind-up period where you move very slowly, to the extent that it can kind of hurt the fun momentum of a fight. It's also way too easy to cheese most of the combat encounters with the powerful charged attack that sends enemies flying. And I would say there probably aren't enough fights to put you out of that comfort zone. At its core though, you only need 30 seconds to figure out how fun Ragdoll can be. These fights are janky as all hell, and they are brimming with charisma. Deidre and Gat make it to the outskirts of Houston, but they're not safe yet. The path is filled with weird creatures. This crab isn't too crazy, but look at this wrath bird. It's like a projectile vomiting raptor chicken with KFC wings and goat horns. Zeno Clash is going to be full of quirky designs like this, ranging from the funny to the hideous. Lots of the buildings and weapons were reminding me of Morrowind or Pathologic. Some of the characters look like cartoons by Ralph Steadman or Colin Thompson. The levels of garishness are downright baroque, I must declare. The art design is what first had me interested in playing this game. Honestly, show me a character that looks like this, tell me they have a horrible secret, and then you got me glued to my chair. Unfortunately though, the animals aren't much fun to fight. The crabs are easy to miss without kick attack, and the wind-up drags so much that this whole scene gets tedious fast. And none of the animals for the rest of the game are going to be any different. At least the wrathbirds are easier to hit. Once we make it to the forest, things get interesting. There's a community of people living here called the Corwid of the Free. Now the intro cutscene is starting to make some sense. Gat used to live in Houston with Father Mother before they had a disagreement over something. Following their argument, Gat was exiled from Houston and he went to live with the Corwids. Deidre seems to think that the Corwids are insane, but Gat admires them for their individualistic and anarchistic society. He's particularly fond of Oxameter, whose only aspiration in life is to walk in a straight line forever, though he wears a giant pot on his head and he often walks in circles. You best hear it from the man himself. He can explain it better than I can.
Here, I met Oxameter. Oxameter just walks in a straight line without letting anything change his path. And that's what Oxameter does. There was also Helm. Helm needed to be invisible, so he removed the eyes from anything that could see him. Luckily, he never became invisible to me. One of them was Erminia. Erminia peed on herself and starved to death anonymously. And that is what Erminia did, because Corwids are not slaves of their needs, of eating or sleeping. There was also Gabel. Gabel ate people, and that's just what he had to do. The Corwids are not slaves to morality or common sense. So, if I were like Anamasta, I would have let Gabel lead me. But I didn't feel I had to be eaten.
So it's still unclear why Gat left his good life with the Corwids to come home and kill Father Mother, or even exactly what Father Mother is. We then begin the first in a series of playable flashbacks, which will seek to expand on the opening cutscene. Gat's love for the Corwids doesn't stop them from wanting to eat him in this flashback, but the rules of society here permit him to choose whether he wants to be eaten or not. So we fight our way out of Gable's pantry. More great character designs, more interesting ecosphere, more fighting mechanics. We're introduced to heavyweight enemies who can only be defeated with melee weapons. They're very easy to stun lock. The melee weapons are going to be simple. They have a light attack, a heavy attack, and a charged heavy attack. They also have visual states of distress. This sword will snap in half after enough use, but it's purely cosmetic. At this point, you'll probably have noticed the weird audio. The game's soundtrack is original, but I hope I don't offend anyone when I say that I find it kind of forgettable. Now, I'm not one of those people that can identify a stock sound when I hear it, but I get the feeling that most of the sounds in this game come from a library somewhere. But that's not the problem. The problem is the voice acting. Listen to this.
By now Rimat must be up and telling your hundreds of brothers and sisters to come after us.
Father Mother had many children, but we are not hundreds.
Okay, Gat's got a cold, affectless Anakin Skywalker thing going on. But what about Deidre?
Oh, you're not hundreds. We're pretty safe then, huh?
What? Are you on Xanax? Here's a few more.
He says he can help you.
You wouldn't want some thief to know you're not from around.
What have you learned? 3 more skills and you will be ready.
You're not allowed here. Look here. Get up.
We'll eat your butter and deafen your skull!
There are a couple of standout performances here, but most of them range from indecipherable to uncanny. There are 10 people credited as voice actors for this game. 3 of them are also developers, so voice work was obviously at a premium. It's also worth noting that this is a Chilean game made for English audiences, and that's a lot of hoops to jump through for a first-time developer. It honestly doesn't bother me that much. It's more funny than anything, and it adds to the mystique. But there's one noise in particular that will haunt me. There's one call out that I wish a lobotomist could cut out of my skull, and you are gonna hear it a lot. Listen what happens when I punch Chicken Joe here upside the head. There's one fight where 2 characters can make this noise, and if you punch them both at the same time, then they will both make it, and it's twice as loud. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, let's move on. During his time living with the Corwids, Gat grew very close with Metamok, the Lego man from our dream at the start. Metamok became a mentor for Gat and taught him how to fight. His reasons for doing this are very cryptic, but he seemed to recognize a purpose in Gat that Gat has been running away from. The flashback closes with Metamok sharing this final wisdom.
If you are satisfied and do what you feel you must do, no matter what that is. Then you have reached perfection.
Before he gives us the Hezbollah farewell. Gat and Deidre have now reached the desert. Their body language here is telling us that they are romantic partners, but nothing in their dialogue backs this up. Deidre lets us know that we've traveled well away from civilization and the pursuit of Father Mother's children, but we're also beginning to starve. We leave her to hunt for some food, but on our way we meet a terrible sight. Oximeter, the walking corvid, is dead. He hit a block in the desert and probably died from thirst. Scenes like this, paired with the natural ambiguity of the world of Xenozoic, offer a great poetic touch. These giants are called Mucalosauruses, and they're completely harmless. We're here for the rabbits. We hunt them using the dual fish gun. Guns in Xenoclash have unlimited ammo, but they need to be reloaded often, and they don't do very much damage. Their use is situational in brawls, but they're very good for shooting animals, because animals have lower health pools. The visual designs for all the guns is fun, but they don't feel very good to use, and they tend to overcomplicate the control scheme once you mix gunfire with the enemy lock-on. Personally, I think the core of the game is the humanoid alien fisticuffs, and the further it strays away from this idea, the more grating it's going to get. This will be a big problem later, but for now, it's just a nice way to change the pace of things. Upon returning to camp, we're confronted by an assassin who holds a gun to Deadra's head. The family have sent him to kill both of us, but he's so impressed by Gat's skill that he wants to fight him one-on-one. This is one of the stronger voice performances. He's icy and seductive, but he's threatening at the same time.
They told me I had to kill her too.
Don't!
Meet me back at where those monsters are, and I will leave her.
The boss fight is pretty easy. He sits on top of a Mucalosaurus and throws exploding squirrels at us. We shoot him until he falls off, then we leave him for dead. This will come back to bite us. Over dinner, Gat shares with Deadra another flashback. In this one, he's returned to Houston with Metamorph's lessons in order to do something ambiguous. He approaches the headquarters of the Northern Gate Gang, claiming to want to ask them about their relationship with Father-Mother. To get into the bar, we need the password, which we learned by beating up some local bandits. Once we're inside the bar, we find a guide who will lead us to Father-Mother. The Northern Gate Bar might be the greatest location in the game. Maybe. There's some tough competition. Anyway, upon seeking audience with Father-Mother, Gat is assaulted by waves of gang members. He fights them off and speaks with Big Bird for all of 2 seconds before she runs off and declares Gat a Corwid sympathizer.
Go away with your new family, the Corwids. You cannot stay with us anymore.
After that, Father-Mother told my family and the Northern Gate Gang that I was a Corwid.
So, we've learnt that Houston is governed by criminal gangs. The Northern Gate Gang is one of them, and Father-Mother's children are another. There are probably more. This place is huge, and the townsfolk are all living in fear. Dad-Mom seems to be an intelligent beast capable of asexual reproduction, which must be how she fills her ranks. We get a lot of answers, but we also get a lot of questions. Most of them are not the sort of questions you want to be asking. The internal logic of the story is starting to fall apart. Let me explain. Here's the big inconsistency. Gat's voiceover tells us that he's here to ask questions at the start of the level, and that he has intentionally circumvented a direct confrontation with Father-Mother. He does not expect to find her here.
After Metamorph killed himself, I decided to go back to Halston. But I didn't go back to the family's plaza. Instead, I went to see the Northern Gate Gang. Our family traded with the gang, but I wanted to know firsthand why Father-Mother spent so much time with them.
But once we stop playing, the action of the game tells us something different. Gat fights his way into the bar, asks to be taken directly to Father-Mother, and then beats up everyone he finds there. So from this, we have to conclude any of several things. Either Gat is lying to Deadra and telling us, the player, something different, or the dialogue was written at a stage of development where the level looked different, or Gat's actual words have been mistranslated to English. It wouldn't be the first time. Once we get into the bar, for instance, the bartender tells this human booger that there's no rooster blood available. That's what the phrasing she is using is suggesting. But then she turns to Gat and offers him some rooster blood.
Sorry, no rooster blood. Would you like some rooster blood? We're out of anything else.
To get into the bar, a member of the Northern Gate Gang told us to fight some ruffians. But when we go to fight the ruffians, the game tells us that the ruffians are also part of the Northern Gate Gang. They're all allies. There are other confusions like this throughout the game, and that's on top of the intentional ambiguities. This game's story is a headache, and I'm not kidding when I say that some of these inconsistencies actually break the causality of events. But we'll come back to this. For now, the flashback has ended. In the present, Gat and Deidre continue walking. They've left the hostile desert in search of more livable conditions, but they don't know where they're going. They've left the mapped region of Xenozoic and have reached the End World. It's very dark here, and it's implied that that name is not just figurative. This is the literal edge of the world. The place is filled with animated statues that can only be defeated with my funny stick that I have here. They're not very fun to fight, and you have no room for mechanical flourish like in the fistfights. The further we get from weird alien brawling, the worse the game gets. Even the environment is boring to look at here. We have to light all the beacons so we can unlock the path forward, which leads us into this temple. In there, we have to play a sort of tower defense game. We have to protect the candles long enough for them all to reach maximum brightness, which will unlock the next door. In the next room, we do the same thing, except this time there's a guy asleep on a throne. He looks like a frostbite victim. Lighting the candles will wake him up. Here's what the bigwig has to say for himself.
Who are you?
You may call me Golem. I am glad you seek the light as I do. For years, I have only seen these shadows. But if you are here, it is because you are lost.
We're not lost. We were going that way until we bumped into you.
No, God. There isn't anything left there. Surprised I know your name. I know everything about you. Deidre, every step you take away from Hellston is to find something better, but every place you leave is worse than the last. We must go back to the real world and solve the problems you are escaping from.
Why would you want to come with us?
Here I was a prisoner, but you have freed me.
But we will never be safe in Halston.
You didn't have me with you before. I can help.
Gat, it sure would be nice to go back to a normal place. We already saw the end of the world.
So the stakes have just risen like a souffle. Gat's now contending with the will of an ancient demigod who spent the last few centuries in a magical prison at the end of the world. I feel like it's important to reiterate that this is all happening because Gat and Deidre are fugitives looking for a safe place to spend the night. Anyway, if the omniscient golem says he can make things right for us back in Halston, then back to Halston we go. The next level might look atmospheric, but it's quite boring. We're riding the river back through the desert towards the forest. And this is exactly what our Time Bandit Street Fighter needed, an on-rails shooting gallery. We have a rifle that we can't drop, and the boat is constantly attacked by these big les Sasquatches that the wiki calls Mucolosaurus worshippers. There's not much to see or do other than listen to Golem talk about his opinion on various topics. He seems to know all about Gat's conflict with Father Mother, and he passes judgment on us with a very didactic tone. Get a load of this.
I want to hear you tell our story.
First, Gat left his family to learn from the Corvids, if you may call that learning. Then he returned to Halston. It is by chance and not virtue that Gat discovered a flaw in Father Mother.
That's what I want to know. What was the problem with Father Mother?
Gat hasn't told you yet. I should let him decide when to tell you. After that, both Gat's and Father Mother's reaction was irrational and violent. I consider both to be criminals.
You know, I think I know a knock when I see one. The Golem has conservative ideas about virtue and duty, and he speaks with a lot of authority. He's self-righteous. He makes a point of drawing our attention to the fact that Gat still won't say why he assassinated Father Mother. The mystery continues. We fight our way back through the forest, encountering a large group of Corvids led by Chinero, the musician. Chinero's music gives everyone a healing buff, including Gat, so we have to take him down first. The part of Chinero's body that deals damage to you seems very inconsistent, so it's hard to take him on without firearms. Deidre sits on the sideline with a rifle, but the golem refuses to get involved. He's really not scoring any points in my book right now. Deeper in the forest, we run into some of Father Mother's children. They've been hunting us for a while now, and it's unclear how much time has passed since we left Halston at the start of the game. This is the first fight so far in Xenoclash to make use of the faction system, and I think it's the only one too. We can let the Corwids and the children fight it out, or we can get ourselves involved. Reinforcements continue to flood in. It's a great fight in an interesting arena. We beat them back and make camp for the night. This was the point in the adventure where I started to wonder about the scale of Xenozoic. So far we've walked on foot to the end of the world and back again, but Father Mother's children are still actively searching for us in the woods. So that means that we mustn't have been away more than a week or two, or they would have given up. The desert also can't be that big, or else we would have died out there. So we know the world is small, but for some reason Gat's culture has severely limited knowledge of the geographic region around Halston. Nobody has been to the Endworld before. So how do we interpret this? Well, when we get to the Endworld, the place hasn't been touched for centuries. Golem tells us that he comes from an older civilization which is long gone. In the desert there are ruins that suggest early settlement. It's possible that Halston is a new culture, or even that they're not interested in exploration. We know the society here is victim to high crime rates. It's unlikely that they have the stability to invest in academic institutions or trade interests. But geographic knowledge is one of the most fundamental cultural pursuits. It's a matter of survival. A city this big would need to know what's out there, but for some reason they don't. So let's be generous and say this is an alien culture on a fantasy planet where people can be sufficient off of small farming regions. Xenozoic might be big, but we know it has natural borders. Let's put Halston near one of them. We can say that people don't explore past the desert because it's a hostile climate. These things might make some sense, but we have to make a lot of leaps of faith in order to get there. The same is true for other parts of the story. I find this limp-wristed storytelling to be kind of baffling when compared to the highly developed art style. All the more curious that the art director is also the lead writer. Maybe things make more sense in Xenoclash 2. Let me know if I should make a video on that one next. So now we enter Gat's final flashback, the one in which he kills Father Mother. After leaving the Northern Gate bar, Gat travels through the sewers to his family's plaza. There, he does what he does best and lets himself in with the 5-finger key. Why? His motivations still aren't clear to us, sort of annoying, but he's obviously learned something horrible about Father Mother and he's come to kill her. Everyone is very cross about our betrayal. The boss fight is not anything special. We shoot her legs until she falls over, which allows us to get damage in with our fists. Rinse and repeat. In the cutscene, Gat kills Father Mother with a skull bomb to the face, the same way that Metamok died earlier. You know, I don't really understand the logic of skull bombs here. I get that it's a bomb made from a skull, but are they really that lethal? You can knock someone out with a skull bomb in a fight and they'll just come back good as new in the next one. But if someone gets bombed in a cutscene, then boy, you better believe that they are dead. Gripe aside, Father Mother is kaput, and we now understand why Gat and Deidre fled the city in level 1. We've now seen every event alluded to in the opening cutscene, all except one, which we're going to come back to later, but things should be clicking into place now. In the present, Gat, Deidre, and Golem continue their journey back to Halston in order to redeem Gat's reputation and restore peace. No one really interrogates Golem on what exactly that means. Gat and Deidre are so desperate for their normal lives back at this point that they just go with it. We've taken the coastal route in order to avoid detection, and we're stopping to rest at a small residence. This lady has a cute pig.
Pig? No, it's not a pig.
Not a pig.
Or at least not just a pig.
Okay, not just a pig.
This is my son, Gosney.
Golem tells us that there's someone tailing us. We go down to the beach with Deidre to confront them. Again with the amazing set pieces. I'm such a sucker for these giant sea creatures. I want to see a boundary break episode on Xenoclash. It turns out that the assassin from the desert has caught our scent again and has come for payback. He sits on top of the whale until we shoot him so much that he dies. Look at this nice detail. The plank is too high for us to climb onto, but after the battle is over, a crab will burst out of the sand and knock the plank down. It's very elegant. We return to the residence to find it completely empty. Everybody's gone. We go back down to the beach to see if Deidre's okay, but it's a trap. The assassin is back. This time he wants to fight us nice and even. Except his idea of nice and even is one hand tied behind his back. This guy really sucks. We beat the crap out of him, but at the last minute he incapacitates us. Golem comes to the rescue. When the assassin scratches him, a wound appears on all three of the main characters. Their fates are obviously tied.
Who are you? There is no one I can...
We won't hear from him again. Now we move onwards to Houston. We reach the gate to Houston, and our presence is sending off all sorts of alarms. Northern Gate members and Father Mother's children are meeting us in force. It's okay though, this game's difficulty curve is absolutely flat, even on the highest difficulty option, and these enemies do not throw any curveballs. Something interesting I haven't mentioned yet actually is that each individual character has their own moveset and telegraphs. This lends big fights like this one a lot of personality. Golem talks a big game about restoring order, but he doesn't seem to be too bothered about the miniature gang war going on in front of him. Whatever his plans are, he's keeping them to himself. We're barely through the front gates when we hear a familiar voice.
Enough! I'm tired of this quarreling inside our family. Follow me.
You know, I think I can honestly say that I was not expecting that to happen. I like her eye patch though. Father Mother is still intensely private about family matters and wants nothing to do with Golem. In the family plaza, we confront her one last time. She nearly gets the best of us, but Golem has our back and breaks his own finger. The injury is mirrored in Deidre, Gat, and Father Mother, showing that all of these characters are magically linked. A hammer to the head brings her down, and now it's time for the final cutscene.
You could either tell my secret or destroy me. I'm glad you didn't tell my secret.
I'm not going to tell. And I'm not going to kill you either. I do consider you my father and mother. You just have to stop doing what you do with the children.
Cat wouldn't tell you Father Mother has a secret, but I will. Things are going to change here. Father Mother is neither your father nor your mother.
Huh?
It turns out that Father Mother is a man, incapable of reproduction, and he's been kidnapping infants in order to raise them as soldiers. This explains why he's been dealing with the Northern Gate gang. He needs their piglets as replacement children. This might also explain Gat's affinity for the Corwids, as it's now possible that he's an ethnic Corwid. It also explains why someone who looks like this has been referred to as our sibling throughout the game. We now know that this is the knowledge which Gat held that motivated his assassination attempt at the start. This is a serious war crime that Father Mother is committing. All the dots are joined now. Golem then declares that he's here to usher in a new social order. He solves the dictatorial Rubik's Cube, and the credits roll over this scene of Houston covered in the same chrome plating that we found at the Endworld, suggesting that an ancient magical authority now has control of the region. Wow, insane. The story mode is pretty short. You can finish it in maybe 4 hours, and each time I play it, I become increasingly interested in the world of Xenozoic and all of its mysterious inhabitants. Unfortunately, Xenoclash is better at raising interesting questions than it ever is at answering them, and there's still a lot that feels half-assed or unfinished. Deidre never has much to contribute to the plot, besides being someone for Gat to share his flashbacks with. There are so many different intelligent creatures here, but no one ever talks about the different species of Xenozoics. There's no lore. Government is absolutely a theme of the story, but we never see enough of Houston to understand what government means to people here. We don't actually see enough of anything in the world for it to really be of interest, except maybe for Gat's account of the Corwids, which I find infinitely entertaining. Golem's relationship with the precursor culture is also painfully ambiguous and poses so many questions. A lot of these issues could be interesting sequel bait, but I think most of it is just the work of an inexperienced writer. And I don't want to sound critical, because I know this was the studio's first game, but there are some serious headaches in here. My biggest problem with the story is that we never learn how Gat knows about Father Mother's crime, and in fact we get conflicting accounts. The opening cutscene suggests that he uncovers evidence of kidnapping over dinner. I think these are the plans right here. And this is what causes Father Mother to banish him to live with the Corvids, because Gat knows too much. This makes the most sense because it explains why Metamok senses in Gat a responsibility to bring truth to the world. And it would explain why Father Mother is so scared of Gat when they meet in the Northern Gate bar. But we have some inconsistencies. At the bar, we see this exchange.
Why did you think I'd want to hurt you? Why couldn't I come here?
He didn't know. But why are you here? It's too late now. You must go away.
So apparently Gat doesn't know about the kidnapping. But then we have another problem because now Gat has no motivation for going to live with the Corvids like we see in the flashbacks, and he also has no motivation for pursuing Father Mother. In the boat level, the all-knowing golem says this about Gat's motivation.
It is by chance and not virtue that Gat discovered a flaw in Father Mother.
Okay, well, thanks dude, that explains nothing. So we have no idea when or how Gat finds out about Father Mother's crime. All we know is that in the final flashback, he's made up his mind and is intent on killing him. None of this is helped by Gat's own tight lips. He won't say anything about this. This is the causality problem that breaks the story. The motivating revelation does not exist. The story happens for no reason. Whatever, you can have your own headcanon. I like to think, personally, that the opening cutscene is correct and everyone else gets it wrong. But you can make up your own solution. Maybe Gat's father's ghost told him all about it. Overall, I have to say that the story is very fun. It's filled with interesting characters and great settings. Gat is obviously torn by his own sense of loyalty. Despite betraying Father Mother, he's still loyal to his family and can't bring himself to tell them the big secret. He knows that it will ruin them. And even though the Corvids keep attacking him and Deidre, he remains loyal to their philosophy and customs. And this conflict, it puts him in worse and worse situations as the story goes on. The combat system is highly expressive, and even though the level design fails to push us to our limits, the complexity of actions lends the gameplay a highly reactive feeling with a lot of personality. There's also a bonus challenge mode available. These levels contain some of the most interesting encounters in the game. I'm a massive fan of the destructible terrain in this one, and I seriously wish the story found a way to use environmental features like this. So, is Xenoclash an underappreciated masterpiece? Not quite, but we can't call it a hidden gem, I think. If any one of these issues with the story or the combat had been polished before release, then maybe it would have been remembered better. As it stands though, I seriously think this game deserves more love than it gets. The fact that it's even this good speaks volume about the ambitious nature of its creators. You can tell that they were working with serious constraints, but it didn't stop them from making something really fun. If anything I've said or shown has interested you, then you should certainly pick this up. It's very cheap these days. At least give it the chance to frustrate you like it did me. Xenoclash did well enough to warrant a sequel, which I'm certainly interested in playing, and more recently the developers have been working on another weird brawler called Clash Artifacts of Chaos, which is also set in the world of Xenozoic. It looks like the story is completely separate from this one and is set in a different part of the map, but maybe we'll get to see this guy again. It looks like a lot of fun. Thank you for watching. Here's to a good year.